Greetings. Here's my new Apple II Plus, well, new to me, that needs some work. So let's go through the steps that need to be done and see what we can do with it then. This was one of the greatest computers ever. I grew up on a Tandy Radio Shack Model 1, but always enjoyed this machine. So I'm glad I got another one, and let's hope we can get it running flawlessly. First we have the monitor. It's an NEC green screen monitor, but it says it works well, green phosphor, so there's nothing we have to do to that. Two drives. I was warned that drive number 1 may be finicky, but I'm going to service both of them, cleaning the heads and relubricating the drive rails, cleaning them and lubricating them, and then see what happens. And there, of course, is the computer. The cautions I received there is that it still has the original refuzz in it, and the keyboard kind of works, but it's missing the functionality of some keys. But at least all the keys are there physically. So let's dive in. I opened her up, but I did not remember these gripper things that hold the top lid on. I mean, those were tough to open up. I was afraid something was going to break, but I guess once it's in place, it's it's as good as being screwed together. So, but again, I don't remember them being this tough to open up. But we got a disc controller card, dual disc controller, and a language card, which is basically a 16K card extending total memory to 64K. There is a power supply we're going to have to figure out how to remove. And then, of course, we have the keyboard. And this was inside the machine. So, there's our marching orders. I removed the board to the switching power supply. And the reason it's hanging there is because it's soldered to the AC input, the fuse and all of that. And if you're pedantic, you can not try to desolder those to get the whole board out, but that's not really necessary. You can work on it, pull it up, turn it, and take the caps out. That refa has a big crack in front, and there's a whole bunch of discoloration behind it. The two front refas look okay, I guess. Let's see that one. Yeah, those two look pretty clean, but since we're in here, we are going to replace all of them. Mine has a 0.1 microfarad between neutral and hot, and 1 each 2200 picofarad between neutral and ground and hot and ground. Looks like we were too late to the party. This one's already blown. The crack on the other side, but expelled its guts. These two are still okay, both sides, but I replaced all three. So sometime in the past, when this cap gave its life, it started to emit thick white smoke and smell really badly. But because these are safety capacitors, which means their failure mode is guaranteed to be the cap opening up when it fails, they are used as filters on the incoming AC line to get rid of high frequency transients. So even if they blow up, the power supply is still going to work, except it no longer filters the AC line. the keyboard is out. This is the underside of all the keys, which push up these little contacts. And this is the PCB, which has a pair of contacts for each key. They don't look too bad, but I'm going to make a pass over them with IPA. Maybe even gently do the little nubs on these that are supposed to do the contact closure, even though those look really clean actually. But we'll give that a try and then we'll test it before putting it all back together again. So I got the keyboard to work, but it was very fiddly. This is the first revision keyboard that was made by the keyboard company, and it doesn't have enclosed key switches, but rather a somewhat complicated leaf spring mechanism that each key pushes on, and that in turn pushes on copper contacts on the PCB underneath. And the problem is, if you have to, in order to take it apart, you have to remove like, I don't know, 12, 14 screws from the PCB to reveal the mechanisms, and then try to fix things blind, put it all back together again and try it out. And what I finally found was that the leaf contacts, they are self-wiping, which means the action of pressing a key slightly wipes the contact, the key contact on the copper contact on the PCB. So if these keyboards have sat for a long time, contacts will corrode, and just using the keyboard at that point is not going to clean things up. You got to open it up, and you got to get all of those copper contacts on the PCB shiny. I tried all sorts of liquids, but what I ended up using was an abrasive stick like this, very lightly over every contact, then cleaning everything up with IPA, and the keyboard came back to life. And on to the next part. Did I already mention that this keyboard was, cleaning up this keyboard was really fiddly? Well, I probably did, but yeah, it was really fiddly. I was not looking forward to having, I think I had to take it apart like 8 or 9 times before I got all the keys to work. But next in line we have this monitor here, a green screen, black and white, green and white monochrome monitor with sound input, which of course the Apple doesn't use because not in its standard form, it only uses the internal speaker it has. It does say works well, and I wasn't exactly sure if that was, literally meant it works well, or if that's a brand name. I've heard of Meanwell power supplies, but never of Works Well monitors. But either way, it does work well, but yes, nothing comes easy. The 3 controls were nearly frozen in place. They were extremely hard to turn. At a point where I was afraid to break the buttons when trying to turn them. So I took it apart, followed my own advice, and only used IPA on the pots. A good drenching, let them sit, evaporate, rinse and repeat, and the buttons actually move normally now. The worst was the power button, because it also doubles as the volume button, and it would emit a very loud noise. There was a really loud, it sounded like a small explosion when you turned this on, because you're turning the pot and the pot was dirty and it was inducing noise into the amplifier. But yeah, just to prove that's gone. And so let's see A, if the monitor works properly, and B, if all the keys work. And there you go. So we're going to need to fill up the screen. There is one oddity about this, which we'll see in a minute. Wow, it's still printing all the letters. Characters actually are really nice quality. I mean, the display area is square, but as you can see, there's relatively large margins on the left and right. I was able to adjust the height, but I cannot adjust the width. I went in, I tried turning the width coil with no effect whatsoever. I got schematics for it and I checked around the width coil. There was a capacitor, another coil and stuff. I checked all of those components and they were all fine. So some of these monitors, I guess the width coil gets adjusted at the factory, or I don't know. I read up, somebody else had posted a blog where they repaired one of these and the complaint was the same. Looking at the monitor, it looks like the tube's slightly rotated. It actually looks extreme on camera. It gets better if we make it face the camera more. But yeah, look at the margin, it's straight. So that's not a problem. So again, it looks good. Let's see if we can get in a little closer. There you go. Look at that. It is very easy to read, and the characters are big enough to read. I'm not going to worry too much about the margins. I did try a TRS-80, plug the TRS-80 into this monitor, and the display area was exactly the same. So one of these days I'll run across a solution and I'll make it wider, but for now it works just fine. And of course it's monochrome, so I'm going to have to put something with color on this to start playing some games. On to the next element. Next is disk drive number 1. I did get a couple of disks that are supposed to be working. And here's an Apple System Master. So let's see. It's plugged in. Power. Well, looks like that one's working. I mean, it needs more of a test. I don't know if you can write to it. But generally when they boot up on the first try like that, it's great. I mean, before turning it on this time, I actually opened this up, cleaned up the inside, which was a bit dusty, cleaned the drive rails and gave them a very light coating of lube. The heads were clean, so I didn't touch those. So DOS version 3.3, I don't even know, well, I guess you can always try DIR. No, it doesn't like that. I don't know, I have to read up on it, but just the fact that it booted up is good. However, one thing I wanted to talk about is the keyboard. Even though I've checked every key, they all work right now. They don't bounce, they're in really good shape. But the feel of the keyboard is really weird. It is kind of, it's very light. It doesn't have that solid clunk that I'm used to from Apple IIs from long ago that were spacebar, very light touch. Not the greatest, but at least we got it to work. So I'm going to stop complaining and pull out the second drive. Here's the second drive. I unplugged the first drive, so this is actually the boot drive now. So we will take the master DOS disk and put that in here. See if this guy boots. It's also been cleaned on the inside. Well, this also boots, so fantastic. It looks like all of the components work. Next, we're going to need to make some of our own disks. And none of this nonsense about using an old IBM PC or using a Joystick floppy emulator or anything like that. It's a really neat site here. It's the address is ASCIIExpress.net/disk server, and it's the Apple disk server, and it makes disks for you on the Apple. But you may say, well, wait a minute, how does it talk to the Apple and how does it do stuff? And the answer is through the cassette port. It's kind of a self-booting thing. It downloads a bootloader through the cassette port, runs it, and then downloads the data in tape format, compressed, and writes it to the disk, pretty much all in one. So all you really got to do here is find what you want. I don't know what I want. Wizardry. There's a few CPM things, but very little actually. But here is the virtual Apple archive, and with 1,574 disks. That's pretty good. But I was thinking, let's pull something off I saw on top, and that is the RAM test utility. So you click on it, and then it basically has the sound playback controls here. And the hi-fi format is a little bit faster than the 8K Fi, but 8K Fi kind of works without much of a hassle. You just have to crank. We're running a cable from the headphone output of the PC to the Apple cassette in, and that's pretty much all you have to do. So let's see how this works. Alright, the top one's still our active drive. Let's remove that disk because you don't want to overwrite it. Then I have a disk with an unreadable label that has a write protect tab on it, which I'm going to have to remove. And it's not cooperating. That write protect tab just didn't want to come off. But okay, so we're supposed to, following the instructions, turn on this machine, do a control reset, then type in the load command. Well, it says type in the load command, hit return, and then start downloading the WAV file. But this guy seems to time out pretty quickly when you hit load. Unlike the TRS-80 that tries forever, this times out after a few seconds and goes dormant. So what I do is I type in load. I aim on the play button. Now I'm going to use the one that, if you remember, there were two. One said format 8K Fi and no format 8K Fi, and what that means is it's referring to the destination disk. So what it'll do, not only will it download all your stuff, but as it's, since you want to write it to write to disk, it will actually go in and format the disk. Now, if you have pre-formatted disks, you can use the no format option and it'll just write to the disk, but I don't even know what most of these disks have. I have a bunch of blank disks. I don't even know what's on them. So I'm going to use the format option and show you the process, which should take a few minutes, but I feel it's very interesting to see. So we got load typed on there. So I hit return, and then I start the download. It's basically playing back the WAV file through the headphone outputs. Loading InstaDisk, ETA 10 seconds. So this is the part that actually does the receiving the data, and this one, oh, and it also had the disk format in it. So it's confused right now. I may have to, no, there we go. I was going to say I may have to bulk erase the disk, but I can hear it stepping. So it is just quickly formatting the whole disk. It doesn't do a disk verify. It would be great if it did that too. But because it's, it doesn't talk back to the host. So it doesn't really know what's happening on this end. So the file download side on the PC or on the website is assuming that this formats, and I immediately get an error. So it's unidirectional. The website is blind. It just sends stuff down and kind of guesses how long it's going to take to Apple to follow the instructions, and it generally seems to work pretty well, but we're going to have to try again. I bulk erased the disk, so let's try this again. Turn this on, reset, put the disk in, load, then rewind the audio file, hit return, and play back the audio file. So it's going to format again. I think maybe last time it took it too long to format and it kind of lost sync. The server got ahead of it, but hey, let's see. It's again loading InstaDisk, which is, let's see, still confused. I started quickly this time, so they should be good. Now also the downloaded data is compressed, so InstaDisk doesn't just format and then receive data and write it to the drive, but it also decompresses the data. Loading data. So what loading data really means is it is getting data from the server, inflating it or decompressing it, and those bars indicate what is getting written to the disk. So it wrote, 7 sectors? Now it's getting more data. So the data is streaming from the server right now. Once it's done with loading it, it's going to go back to the inflating. Inflation is everywhere. And it does that till the disk is full. So while we're waiting for this to happen, I'll turn off the camera. Didn't take that long, but as you can see, this is solid now. It wrote the whole disk. Didn't get an error this time. And Done, press return to reboot. So it's basically going to boot the disk that it just wrote. And what was this? This was the RAM test. Here we go. Okay, what do we want to do? Force test. Number 4, force test of the 2E auxiliary memory. No. 3. We want the language card. So it's going to load the program. And that's a lot of code. Come on. Are you sure you want to do this? Comment now if I shouldn't. But anyway, here we go. So essentially it did a real quick test. Tested the ROMs and it tested memory from D1000s to FFFF. But yeah, if we click on all now, it'll go in and test all of the memory. And that goes very quickly. So yeah, this is by no means an exhaustive memory test. I mean, I think all he's doing is writing one value to RAM, reading it back, and if it comes back good, okay. There's no walking bits or interference tests or anything like that. But there you have it. So now you saw how little time it took to make a disk. And no other machines were involved. Basically all that was involved was a PC or a Mac, I guess, with and an audio cable, an 1/8" audio cable, and there you have it. So now I guess that proves that this drive is able to write. I just have to download something on this and have it written on here to verify that that writes, but it looks like we're in good shape here. Oh yes, and there is one last element that also came with this. It's the TKC joystick, and TKC stands for the Keyboard Company, which is a company that designed this wonderful keyboard. But anyway, you know, it's a okay joystick. It's not self-centering. I cleaned this one up inside, you know, put IPA into the 2 pots, the XY pots and stuff, but it's did a quick test to see if the resistance was changing, and it does. I'll have to download a game that utilizes a joystick for a full test, but I don't know. I'm very used to self-centering joysticks. And one of the problems with these, as I remember, is that basically when you're playing a joystick game, it says, hey, put the joystick in the middle and then hit the button. And then it creates a huge dead zone into what it considers the middle. And it really affects gameplay, because that game zone, I mean, if you're just lightly moving the stick, nothing happens. You have to move it quite significantly to get out of the dead zone. And anyway, I should stop, not make up my mind about this yet until I download something, a game that uses a joystick. And what else is there to say? Well, I have a big task ahead of me, and that is I have to find 1,574 floppy disks so I can make a big disk library for the Apple. I have to experiment with, you know, turning them into flippy disks, which means using the other side of the disk, using a paper punch to make the write enable hole on the left side of the disk and just put that in. The disks are usually coated, even though when they're sold as single-sided, they're coated on both sides during the manufacturing process, but they don't test side 2. I mean, they don't verify side 2, and they sell it as a single-sided disc. So sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So at best, I'm only going to need 760 some discs to transfer the entire library over. But I think that's a big job, and it's going to take me a while. But when I'm done, we'll see each other again. So thanks for watching. Hit that subscription bell. Leave me a comment. And we'll see you when I'm done with the disc collection for the Apple II Plus.